Hey guys, so we are back for another installment of Thought for the Day, and we are still continuing our journey on prayer. And so, in our previous videos, we talked about how prayer is conversation, about how prayer is about being vulnerable, about how it is being personable or personal with God, but it is also about asking ourselves, how bad do we want it? And so, as we continue the journey, I want to pick up with a person who has been having conversation with God the longest. And that person is Jesus. He's been with God since the beginning of creation. And we want to know, if you've been sitting and having conversation with somebody the longest, what works, right? Like, what's gonna get this thing across to that person? And Jesus, in his dopeness in teaching, spent some time explaining to the people how to have conversation with God. And he does that in Matthew chapter 6, verse 5 through 15. And this week, I want to spend time just digging through that section. But I want to begin today focusing on verse 5 and 6. And I'm going to read it from the Message Bible, and it reads like this. And when you come before God, don't turn into a theatrical production either. All these people make a regular show out of their prayers, hoping for stardom. Do you think God sits in a box seat? Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honest as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense His grace. So, I want to first begin and sit and say that when we pray or when we're having conversation, it should be attention grabbing, not attention seeking. So attention seeking means that we're looking to be validated and to be proven right and these type of things. And that's not what a conversation with anyone should be. It should not be about you looking to be validated. And moreover, we as believers don't need to be validated because Christ already validated us. He already made us heirs. We are already God's children. We already have provision. We have already have all these things. We know that Jeremiah 29:11 tells us that God has a plan for us where there's hope, peace, and a future, right? So all of these things are already validated for us. So we don't need to look for validation. But what we do need to do is be attention grabbing. We need to be able to have a conversation with God where we put and grab and place God at the center. We need to grasp God. We need to grasp what is supposed to be happening, and come to a common understanding. And so I want to kind of take this out of this and kind of think about, when you have a conversation with someone, how do you come to the table? Are you coming to the table saying, I need to prove my point to you? Or are you saying, hey, I want you to understand me, and I want to understand you? And so when we have prayer, we need to know that it needs to be attention grabbing where we want to be able to grab onto an understanding. We want God to understand us where we are at, but we also want to understand where God's at. And I think it's really important, because that brings out what is being talked about in these two verses. Where it says the focus will shift from you to God. So you come to the table with some stuff, and so God is going to come to the table. The word tells us that He will meet us, as we push towards Him, God will push towards us. So we know that in having a conversation, there'll be a push and a shift. But there's also important to understand that this is not about like doing this for people, for them to see us, and for all of those things. That it really just simply is about getting into a conversation with God. Now, one thing I do want to highlight, and I don't want people to walk away with saying, well, she read that it says find a quiet space and, don't be tempted to role play. And, and that's why I don't want to, pray, on the prayer line. And that's why I don't want to pray in church. And that's why I don't want to pray when I get together with my friends. No, 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 no. That's not what this is about. This is about Jesus setting the frame for us that prayer is personal conversation. And in it being personal conversation, you got to be able to tune everything out. So for me, I want to offer a helpful tip. One of the things that I do when I pray with friends, when I pray at church, when I pray on the prayer line, I close my eyes. Even if I'm in my house, even if I'm on a prayer line with my mom, even if I'm on a prayer line with church, I close my eyes so that I'm not getting into the focus of what other people are saying, what other people are thinking and doing. I think that's one of the best things about the fact that on prayer lines, we ask people to be or to put their phones on mute, because you can tune everyone out and you can become completely focused on the things that need to be said, on the things that we want to grab attention with God. So it's important to remember that. And it's just a time to be honest. And you shouldn't feel like you have to do things because of the way other people do them. Because if somebody calls, God, hey daddy, you don't got to call him daddy. When I pray, I don't say hey daddy. I say loving Jehovah. And there are reasons for that. And we'll talk about that later. But it's about continuing to have a conversation that's personal. And in that, we shouldn't allow the fact that we have to pray in groups to step away from the fact that we're looking to have an attention grabbing conversation. So as you leave this, remember that we want to have attention grabbing conversation. We want to be able to have a conversation where God is grabbed and placed at the center, and where we're looking to give him all of us so that God can give us all of him.